Welcome to episode 86 of Fascinating, a Star Trek podcast, The Undiscovered Country.
In this week's movie, peace talks between the Federation and the Klingons gather pace. After a major disaster near the Klingon homeworld, Kirk and the Enterprise are assigned to escort the Chancellor to Earth. But when he is assassinated, it is the Captain and his Doctor who are held responsible. With galactic peace in the balance, can Spock and the crew solve the mystery and rescue their friends? Or will the chance for peace slip away?
Good evening, Ian. How are we?
Good evening, Gerry. I'm very well. How are you?
Genitals all in the right place, thankfully.
The usual place, anyway.
Not necessarily the right place.
Yeah.
Depends how you look at them.
Not really compared directly.
Apart from that one time.
A band camp.
Too much Romulan ale.
That's the one. Well, see here, it can go badly wrong, can't it?
Yeah.
I thought this was quite an apt and fitting end to the story for these guys.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It wasn't terrible in any way.
I thought it was really quite good. I thought it was really very good.
Yeah. No arguments here.
Anything you want to discuss before we go on?
Not really, no. I mean, I think next week, even though this is our final proper episode, we'll have a wrap-up where we can discuss things in a bit more detail and have a chat about what's next for us as we boldly go.
Indeed. We'll be boldly gone fairly shortly. As usual, in the meantime, people can find us on social media. We're at Trek Podcast on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and we're at astartrekpodcast.com and on YouTube as well. You ready?
Let's crack on.
Dedication to Gene Roddenberry at the start.
I assume this is the first production since his death?
Well, I think he died during production or post-production of the movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah, 91, so yeah.
There you go. We begin in space where we see an explosion and shockwaves being sent out from it.
It looks like a whole planet blew up.
Yeah. Or a planetoid at the very least.
Yeah, some kind of celestial body.
We then have a captain's log, but not the typical one.
No, were you surprised?
Yeah, I was surprised, and I'm not sure I was entirely happy about this. Anyway, 9521.6, and we're on the Excelsior.
Yes, we saw that in a couple of the earlier movies.
Mm-hmm. Okay, who's giving us the log?
Captain Sulu.
I'm sorry. He has got this undeserved position. Nothing he has done that we have seen has warranted or qualified him to be given the command of a starship. It doesn't have what it takes to be a commander.
But look what he's been asked to do. Chart gaseous anomalies for 5 years.
Yeah, that's your first position. That's your first assignment. You've got to do the...
He's a very much by the book sort of guy. I think he's the one they trust just to go out there, track the anomalies, ignore all the potential side missions that Kirk would take them on, and get back home without meeting any gods, aliens, or anything else.
Yeah. Everything apparently is fine, and he is now heading home until there is a violent tremor which causes his cup of tea, he's very much at home here, relaxed, to fall, and his science officer reports an energy wave.
It's a very low intensity environment, isn't it?
Yeah.
On the Excelsior.
Chilling out with cups of tea and biscuits to dunk into it.
His cup of tea rattled around for a long time before it fell. You'd think he could have picked it up.
Yeah, possibly.
Anyhow, this is the shockwave, we presume, from that exploding planetoid. Yeah,
and we see it on the viewer heading their way, and Sulu barks for shields to be raised.
Once it passes and they're all a bit shaken up but still alive, the science officer reports that the origin of the shockwaves was the Klingon moon Praxis.
Sulu notes that this is their primary energy production facility, and so he instructs Rand, who is obviously with him, Kirk has got shot of her, to message the Klingon High Command offering their assistance.
Yes, which happens, and whilst that's going on, they see on sensors that most of Praxis is now missing, and they hear a very short segment of a distress call.
Yeah, from a dying Klingon. And then Brigadier Kerler, he video comms through from the Klingon High Command confirming there was an incident, but everything is on hand. They don't need to bother about going to help, and they should stay outside the neutral zone.
Very Chernobyl.
Very much, yeah. Sulu, he can't believe that this was called a mere incident, or that Rand is unsure if they should report it. It's like, what do you think?
Yeah. She's probably that used to Kirk just saying, no, wait a minute, we're going to go and shoot them first.
It's fine. Captain, should I report the 12 red shirts that you lost? No, just leave that.
Put it in as 3.
Where do we head to?
Starfleet headquarters, I believe.
Yeah, conference room by the looks of it, where Kirk, McCoy and Scotty are wondering why they are there and consider if it may be a retirement party for them.
I think, Chekhov and Uhura are there as well, and some other officers, and Kirk tells him that Sulu's missing because he's on assignment, but he doesn't know where Spock is.
This is revealed to us shortly as they call it the C&C, is that the Commander-in-Chief?
I guess so, yeah.
He walks in and briefly notes that the Klingon Empire has only 50 years of life left, and more will be revealed by the Federation Special Envoy, who then enters the room.
2 months ago, a Federation starship monitored an explosion on the Klingon moon Praxis. We believe it was caused by overmining and insufficient safety precautions. The moon's decimation means deadly pollution of their ozone. They will have depleted their supply of oxygen in approximately 50 Earth years. Due to their enormous military budget, the Klingon economy does not have the resources with which to combat this catastrophe. Last month, at the behest of the Vulcan ambassador, I opened a dialogue with Gorkin, Chancellor of the Klingon High Council. He proposes to commence negotiations at once.
Negotiations for what?
The dismantling of our space stations and star bases along the neutral zone. An end to almost 70 years of unremitting hostility, which the Klingons can no longer afford.
Bill, are we talking about mothballing the Starfleet?
Well, I'm sure that our exploration and scientific programs would be unaffected, Captain, but...
I must protest. To offer Klingons safe haven within Federation space is suicide. Klingons would become the alien trash of the galaxy. And if we dismantle the fleet, we'd be defenseless before an aggressive species with a foothold on our territory. The opportunity here is to bring them to their knees. Then we'll be in a far better position to dictate terms.
Sir.
Captain Kirk.
The Klingons have never been trustworthy. I'm forced to agree with Admiral Cartwright. This is a terrifying idea.
It is imperative that we act now to support the Gorkin Initiative, lest more conservative elements persuade his empire that it is better to attempt a military solution and die fighting.
You, Captain Kirk, are to be our first olive branch.
So a bemused Kirk is told to rendezvous with the ship bringing Gorkin to Earth and escort him safely through the Federation airspace or what have you. Space, yeah.
Spock says he's personally vouched for Kirk in this matter, which seems to irritate Kirk.
Yeah, he's been put forward for this.
Yeah.
Spoken on his behalf. And he's clearly at this point, it shouldn't have been vouched for because he doesn't agree with what...
No, and he's just stated. Yeah. He agrees with Cartwright's racist views.
However, the Council are not willing to listen to any complaints. It's been agreed. The meeting disperses and the unhappy Kirk finds himself alone with Spock, who quotes an old Vulcan proverb.
Yes, only Nixon could go to China.
Kirk, however, isn't interested in this and asks why he could be so arrogant as to vouch for him on his behalf, as he knows he considers the Klingons to be animals. Now, this sort of ignores the ending of the last movie, The Final Frontier.
Yeah, when they got together for a dinner.
Yeah, they were all sort of fist pumping each other and giving it a thumbs up across the room.
All doing what you have to do in the moment.
I don't know, at that point that they had
broken the ice a wee bit.
Exactly.
Apparently not.
Kirk wouldn't have it, yeah.
Kirk's had years to fester since then.
Yeah. Well, he said he doesn't care about the supposed historic opportunity and shoots out in a staccato fashion that he doesn't believe or trust in them. And he says, in fact, he's happy to let them die. You know, this doesn't sit quite right with me, the character of Kirk. He normally has sympathetic or empathetic qualities. He's not a vindictive man necessarily. I know there's obviously been a personal tragedy here, but I don't know. It seems they've taken his character to the extreme a little bit too much for my liking.
Okay. They pull him back, don't worry.
As long as you don't pull him off.
The crew are due to stand down in just a few months, but they now have one last mission.
Yeah, the whole 3 months, it's very sort of cliched now. You know, it's like the cop's about to retire.
It also doesn't make sense because they're not all the same age. I suppose just as a crew, they've got 3 months.
Yeah.
Others will be reassigned. It's not that they're all going to retire.
Yeah. I mean, I think McCoy probably is going to retire.
Yeah.
He said it, I think.
Kirk probably considered it.
Yeah.
Spock.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. What's Kirk going to do? You get to retirement age of being a captain.
Yeah, he's tried being an admiral before, he didn't like it.
Yeah, he doesn't want the pen pushing all the sort of paperwork. He's an action type guy. He would maybe do it for a month before jacking it in and saying, I can't be having this, I'm just going to retire.
Yeah.
And then dying because he's the type of person.
Nothing else to do.
Yeah.
Anyhow, a shuttle approaches the Enterprise and is cleared to deliver Kirk and his crewmates.
Who do we meet here?
On the bridge, we meet a new Vulcan person.
Lieutenant Valeris, who has volunteered, and Spock notes that she is the first Vulcan to graduate at the top of her class at the Academy.
He seems to like her. He says it's very agreeable to see her again.
He's probably been following her progress as a fellow Vulcan. I'm sure he's taken
I think he said at some point that he's her sponsor.
Right, okay.
So he has taken an interest in putting her through.
It's understandable.
Kirk says that she must be proud of this achievement, but she says she doesn't believe so, which convinces McCoy that she is definitely Vulcan.
Yes, quite like that. They all take their positions, and Valeris questions an order about thrusters from Kirk.
Well, she wants to go buy the book, but he says, nope, just hit the pedal, we're getting out of here quickly.
Yeah, I think this caused a ripple of amusement through the rest of the crew who looked up to see how Kirk would react to this questioning of his.
Yeah, well, the last time we saw Kirk getting questioned, probably the first motion picture, when the other captain, whose name escapes me now, Decker.
Yes.
He was undermining Kirk, but then on that occasion he knew better.
Yeah, I think Kirk is now, he's back in the swing of things.
Yeah, definitely is.
Anyway, he reaffirms what he wants with a smile. And so she obeys before the Enterprise leaves the dock.
Yeah.
Captain's log, a proper one this time, 9522.6.
Just before Kirk starts speaking, he places a photo of his son back on his desk. He's obviously in his room recording this log. He says again that he's never trusted the Klingons. He says he never will, and he doesn't forgive them for the death of his boy.
Now, this log has an important role to play.
It does.
Later in the movie. So we're in Kirk's quarters. He continues to disparage the mission and wonders how history can get past people like him.
A wee bit of self-awareness, I suppose, there.
There's a few times in this movie that I think he does recognise that.
Yeah.
In fact, they say it quite explicitly later on.
Indeed. He turns to find Valeris at his open door and asks her why she didn't knock.
How does she respond to that?
Well, she says that they are almost at the rendezvous.
That's not an answer.
Not really.
And then asks to speak freely and claims that it is an honour to serve beside him. He returns the compliment.
Yep, says she piloted the ship well out of space dock, and she says that she'd always wanted to try that.
Yeah, we've discussed this before. It's not really doesn't look very hard. Press a few buttons and
It goes a bit faster than you're meant to.
We then head over to Spock's quarters.
I'm pretty sure it's the same room as Kirk's quarters with different decorations.
Just dressed it slightly. Yeah, of course that's what you'd do. It's a bit later. Spock is also praising her as he sets up some sort of dubious private ceremony.
Yeah, something to do with candles, and it ends up with a liquid.
Get her trying to seduce her here?
I don't know, but he tells her she's done well. This is where he mentions that he's her sponsor. And then she draws attention to a painting on the wall.
Yeah, she doesn't understand it, and he explains it is from ancient Earth.
20th century, probably.
Yeah. It's a mythology, and it signifies to him that all things end eventually.
And that's a little segue for her, because she wants to talk about endings as a kindred intellect.
Yeah, but also, I mean, I think it's probably a nod here to the final movie.
Yeah, almost certainly. There's a few of those throughout the film.
Nice touch. Yeah, she wants to talk to him about endings, not happy ones.
It's quite an important scene as well. So she explains that this could be a turning point in the history of the Federation, and he tries to tell her that she needs to have faith that things will work out the way they should. But she says that's not logical.
Yeah, however, he counters by claiming logic is only the beginning of wisdom, not the end. And this, I think, is a new outlook, perhaps a progression on Spock's part. Yeah,
there's a confusing moment here where he says this is going to be his final voyage on the Enterprise and he hopes for her to replace him.
Okay.
But if they're all getting papped off the Enterprise, if it's their last mission, What's she going to replace him as part of?
Sorry, I don't understand.
Oh, they've got 3 months left.
Right.
Till they break up this crew and the Enterprise is... The crew's not together anymore.
Yeah.
So what's she...
She'll become the science officer with a new crew on the Enterprise.
It's not really replacing Spock, is it?
Yeah, it is.
If everybody's changing.
Yeah, they're all being replaced.
I got the impression that the Enterprise is getting binned.
No, that's a new Enterprise, remember?
Why did they get rid of all the people that are on it then?
They've all served their time. The core crew, we're not saying everyone, not saying every red shirt and every nobody, but the main bridge crew.
So why is Chekhov not getting the ship?
Would you give the ship to Chekhov?
I don't know.
No, everyone knows Chekhov, no chance.
You've got an experienced crew here and you're kicking them all off.
No, but I think that, again, if you've done a certain amount of time, they've done the 5, 7, whatever it is, 10 years now on board, they say, right, your time's up. And Chekhov will go somewhere else. Maybe Chekhov will go to another ship, or maybe Chekhov will be promoted or whatever, given a desk job out the way, hopefully out of trouble. But yeah, I think the crew has worked together for 10 years and they're freshening things up.
I think it's a little bit muddled.
Do you?
Yeah.
Alright, okay.
Anyway, she says that she couldn't replace him, she could only succeed him. And then they drink the ritual juice, whatever it was.
Yeah, some sort of, was it GHB or whatever it is?
Who can say? Something you produced with fire and science.
Yeah.
Uhura calls the officers to the bridge and we see a Klingon ship in the exterior shot as Kirk arrives.
Yeah, he remarks that he has never seen one so close before.
That's not true. He's been on one for the last 3 movies.
That's true. Yeah. They move alongside it and a hailing frequency is opened to allow Kirk to speak to Gorkon, and he cordially invites him to dine on the Enterprise as a guest.
Did you notice they've installed a clock above the view screen just so they can say come at 7:30?
No, I didn't notice that.
Right at the top of the middle of the view screen's a clock.
Yeah, there you go.
Based on what time they're going through the universe, they're not going around the sun. Federation time.
I suppose you need some sort of baseline if you're telling someone to meet you as, you still have to work as a team towards certain deadlines. Yeah. The offer is respectfully accepted, and it is arranged, as you say, for them to come aboard at 7:30. The uncomfortable Kirk then goes to leave and is told on his way out by Valeris that there is a Romulan ale on the ship which he might find useful for that evening's entertainment.
He praises her for officer thinking.
Yes. He leaves and Chekhov quips, "Guess who's coming to dinner?" Now, did you get that reference?
I can't. Yeah, I knew. I looked it up. I can't remember what it said. But
yeah, I mean, it's a movie with Sidney Poitier, Spencer Tracy, and Katharine Hepburn. It's about a liberal couple who believe themselves to be liberal, and their daughter brings home a black guy, a boyfriend, and it challenges their views or their understanding of how liberal or how open they actually are themselves.
Apparently, Nichelle Nichols refused this line because it meant to be Uhura.
Right, okay.
And she wasn't willing to say it. And I think there's a few other occasions in this show where she wasn't willing to express the other people got the lines. Yeah.
Okay, good movie.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think it was 2 Oscars, including I think Hepburn won an Oscar for that herself. Anyway.
But I think the idea was just that this makes Chekhov look racist.
Does it?
Yeah, he's saying somebody different from us is coming, and he said it the way he says it as well. Yeah,
sure, but I think I'm not sure. I wouldn't say he was racist. He's alluding to the movie where people did feel there was someone coming who made the host feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, so you see he's got this anti-Klingon feeling.
Yeah, but that doesn't make Chekhov racist. That's pointing out what Kirk's admitted. He says, "I don't like Klingons. I wish they would all die." Yeah,
but I think he's talking, when Chekhov says it, he's referring to not just Kirk. I think he's referring to all of them, or at least himself.
Yeah, but later on, a lot of them do admit that they had the same view. Yeah. But I don't think. Yeah, I mean, it's racist in the sense that you're anti-Klingon. Yeah. Generally, yeah.
Anyway, we moved into the transporter room after a external shot of the 2 ships together side by side, and Gorkon is welcomed on board by a crewman with electric pipes.
Yes, along with his daughter Azit Bur and Kerala, Chang, and some other goons, I think.
1 or 2 minor Klingons as well. Do you remember the last time that the pipes got played for someone arriving on the Enterprise?
No, I remember the pipes being played when at Spock's funeral.
Yeah, they played. No, that was the bagpipes. They played the pipes for President Lincoln.
Ah, right.
In the Savage Curtain.
Yeah,
on board.
Sure. Kirk then leads them out for a tour, and I suppose the tension is palpable amongst them, all parties.
Chang tells Kirk that he's long wanted to meet him, and Kirk is assured that this is a expression of sincere admiration from one warrior to another.
They leave, and a couple of Starfleet goons make snide comments about the Klingons. This was particularly nasty, I thought.
Talks about how they all look alike and smell bad.
Yeah, they are rightly reprimanded.
Yeah, by Valeris, who's still there. She tells them to get back to work.
We go to the dining room. They are sat across from each other at the table.
It's a clear separation. They're not going for any of this sort of mingling.
No, not one of each.
Yeah, no, none of that.
The Klingons' uncouthness is amusingly on display.
They can't work out the napkins.
No, before Gorkon toasts the undiscovered country, which he has to explain is a reference to the future.
Yeah, they've all been given this Romulan ale as well. That's what the blue liquid is.
Yeah,
that's poured for them. Spock recognises the undiscovered country line from Hamlet.
There's a lot of Shakespeare in this movie.
A lot of Shakespeare. Gorkon tells him you can't appreciate Shakespeare unless you've heard it in the original Klingon.
I think this irks Kirk and the others slightly.
Yeah, but it's the same joke that Spock made.
Well, same joke Chekhov's always making.
Yes, and Spock made it earlier with the Only Nixon line, and he says it again later with the Sherlock Holmes line. Anyhow, the Klingons are surprised to be served illegal Romulan ale, and Kirk points out it's one of the benefits of being 1,000 light years from Federation HQ.
They then toast Gorkon before Chang induces silence when he asks Kirk if he is willing to give up Starfleet, which causes some tension that Spock is only able to partially diffuse.
Yeah, Chang's demeanour is quite spiky.
It's understandable. He is more like Kirk. Gork is obviously more aligned to Spock.
Yeah.
They are very much for the peace process.
Yeah. Chang tells Kirk there's no need to mince words, as in space all warriors are cold. Whatever that means. Uhura,
she starts to ask about about Gorkon's fondness for Shakespeare, but stops in disgust at his eating habits, and Chekhov puts his foot in it by insensitively talking of inalien human rights.
Inalienable, yes. Things start to degenerate from here. Anyhow, Gorkon's daughter considers Chekhov's use of that phrase racist, denouncing the Federation as a Homo sapiens only club.
I would have to agree with this. You can't talk about human rights and things like that, yeah.
I mean, you're not even all human on your own team, because Spock's only half human.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyhow, Kerla, you mentioned him before, the military advisor, he says things are leading towards the annihilation of Klingon culture. He doesn't like it.
Okay. Is it Kerala? Did I call him something else? Kerala? I don't know what I called him.
Kerala chicken. McCoy denies this and tempers flare between the two groups of officers.
Kirk certainly does not ease the situation by invoking Godwin's law.
He does. Chang notes that the Klingon people need their breathing room. And Kirk's response is, what, Hitler, Earth 1940.
I mean, really? And again, what's this, these references to hundreds of years ago?
Well, he's playing on the earlier folk citing Shakespeare.
Yeah, perhaps.
Chang is very unimpressed, and Gorkon himself notes there's a long way to go.
Well, Gorkon's very reasonable. He admits that he doesn't blame Kirk for not trusting them.
Yeah.
Gorkon's a good guy. I like Gorkon.
We get a very quick cut down to the transporter room. Yeah,
the visiting party stand on the pod and beam back across to their ship, leaving the gang to sheepishly admit that it wasn't perhaps the greatest of successes, and maybe accepting their behaviour didn't help.
Yeah, well, yeah, just before they leave, Gorkon says to Kirk that he doesn't blame him for his mistrust, and that their generation will have the hardest time if there's going to be a new world. It's the same in real life now.
Yeah, sure.
You try and move on and folk try and drag you back to the 70s.
We're now up in Kirk's quarters, where a slightly worse for wear captain takes a note or a log that Romulan ale should no longer be served at parties.
Yeah, and admits that their behaviour wasn't exactly Emily Post. I think that's a dated reference. I think she's an etiquette writer from the first half of the 20th century. Yeah. He's also looking at his photo of David again, who he didn't care about in the previous movie.
No. He lies down only to be immediately communicated to by Spock, asking him to join him on the bridge.
Yeah, something unusual has happened, a strange energy reading.
Yeah, so he asks Valeris about this, but neither she nor Chekhov knows anything, can't help him.
And just as they think about it, the Enterprise starts shooting torpedoes at Gorkon's ship.
Whoa.
Were you surprised that Kirk would do that?
Yeah, I was.
Did you think that Kirk had done it?
No.
Who did you think had done it?
At this point, I didn't think it was any of the-
saboteurs.
Yeah.
Scotty, though, immediately claims that it can't be them. They still have their full complement of torpedoes on board, which muddies things up slightly.
The Klingon transporter room.
Yes, gravity's been knocked out here. All the Klingons are floating around helplessly.
And we see 2 stormtrooper-style people in anti-gravity, or gravity boots, I should say, arrive and shoot a Klingon dead, then proceed into the ship, killing and maiming as they go.
Did you like the one when the guy got his arm shot off?
Yes, that was good.
He shows up later on with his arm missing.
Does he?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Eventually they find Gorkon and they shoot him as well.
Yeah, leaving others floating among their lava-like innards.
Oh yeah, and you see Klingon blood's purple. Part of that gets them by the sensors,
Right.
because there's so much of it.
Sure. Yeah, that would make sense.
Once gravity is restored on the Klingon ship, Gorkon is discovered and appears to be mortally wounded.
Before we get there, we should say that the 2 assassins leave by beaming away, and it looks like some of the lava blood has went with them.
Yes, certainly transports out.
The crew then manage to get auxiliary gravity working, which causes the bodies to fall harshly on the floor, and the lava to splat like paint.
It does. It's quite good special effects, all the floating around.
Yeah, that was quite good, yeah.
And as I say, Gorkon's discovered and he appears to be fatally injured.
On the bridge of the Enterprise, Kirk receives a video communication from Chang, who apparently can't believe Kirk's disgusting and cowardly attack on them after they came in peace, and he threatens to blow them out of the stars in revenge.
Kirk denies that they fired, although Spock tells him the Enterprise databanks say that they did.
So as he tries to take what's happened in, Valeris warns him that the Klingon ship is coming towards them, and both she and Chekhov ask if they should raise shields.
But Kirk surprises them by ordering surrender instead.
Now, that is a crazy move. Why would he assume that they just wouldn't blow them out of the sky, out of space?
Oh, they're peaceful people.
That's a stupid thing to do.
I think he's so mystified by what's going on. It's his way of saying, look, we genuinely don't know what's going on.
It's still a ridiculous risk to take.
Yeah. He and McCoy beam over to the Klingon ship to try and help. But Spock seems to slap a post-it on his back or something as he's going.
And as they rush to leave, he instructs Uhura to let the Klingons know that they are unarmed. This is bad decision making here.
Yeah. Over on the Klingon ship, they're surprised that Kirk and McCoy have come at all, but they are told they want to help.
And so they are told to follow them. We go to the room, the main room, wherever it is.
Yeah, where Gorkon is, and Chang narrates the events that have occurred as McCoy tries to save the Chancellor. Unfortunately, he has no idea what he's doing.
No, none at all.
We've seen this before when he's tried to help Spock, and he just doesn't know Vulcan anatomy.
Yeah, he gets on top of him, and there's some disgusting wounds that you see.
Yeah, he's oozing.
Yeah, he tries to stab him with a stabby thing, and then
Doesn't work.
even a bit of mouth to mouth and a bit of heart pumping and
that
thumping.
revives him briefly, just enough to make a final statement to Kirk, telling him not to let the peace process die with him.
And there's a moment of obvious tension, understandable tension and disbelief before McCoy and Kirk are shackled and arrested with the charge of assassination.
Shocker.
Well, I mean, I don't know what they expected. They should put the shields up.
Flying, flown away.
Well, at least say, listen, let's chat about this. Explain it. You don't jump across here. Admit that you're not armed. Keep your shields down. I'm sorry, it's
It's
just...
like gung-ho, isn't it?
Yeah.
Back on the bridge of the Enterprise A, Uhura relays news of the arrest, and Spock immediately assumes command of the ship and initiates a full-scale investigation.
He also tells her to let Starfleet know what's happening and to get them to give some advice. Valeris then states that they can't let them be taken prisoners to Kronos, but Spock sees no alternative, and at least they're still able to track their movements.
Chekhov wants to know what will happen if they can't figure it out, and Spock tells him that would unfortunately leave things in the hands of the politicians and the diplomats.
Yeah. In any case, Spock wants priority placed on finding out exactly what happened, and although Scotty insists they're innocent, Spock tells him they need evidence. We then head to the Starfleet Presidential Office, where a Klingon ambassador is angrily pointing out the facts to the President.
The Chancellor of the High Council is dead. The result of an unprovoked attack while he traveled to see you under a flag of truce on a mission of peace. Captain Kirk was legally arrested for the crime. May I remind you that he and Dr. McCoy boarded Kronos 1 of their own free will? None of these facts are in dispute, Mr. President.
I have ordered a full-scale investigation. In the meantime,
we expect the Federation to abide by the Articles of Interstellar Law, which you claim to cherish. Kirk and Dr. McCoy will stand trial for the assassination of Chancellor Gorkin.
out of the question. Ambassador Sarek, there must be some way to extradite these men?
Mr. President, I share a measure of personal responsibility in this matter, but I am obliged to confirm my esteemed colleague's legal interpretation.
What is the position of the Romulan government, Ambassador Nonplus?
I must concur with my colleagues.
But you can't possibly believe that James Kirk assassinated the Chancellor of the High Council.
Mr. President, I don't know what to believe.
I'm waiting for your answer, sir.
This president is not above the law.
Oh dear. Ominous.
Although the correct decision's made, you can't. You have to play this by the book.
The law is the law.
Back in the bridge, Uhura relays the news that they are to report back to Starfleet at once. And she and Chekhov are obviously unhappy about being asked to leave Kirk and McCoy.
Yeah, Valeris, who's becoming increasingly irritating, gives them a little anecdote about the origins of the word sabotage.
Yeah, it's a sort of cryptic solution here.
And Uhura decides to report that their backup systems are not functioning, which pleases Chekhov.
Back in the President's office, Azitbar communicates through to advise that she has now been installed as Chancellor on her father's death and gets straight to the point.
Yeah, she says that she will attend secret peace talks on the condition that Kirk and McCoy are not subject to any kind of military extraction and they're allowed to hold their trial. And
yeah, she says this would be viewed as an act of war.
Indeed, and after the call ends, she receives some conflicting advice.
What's that?
Well, some of her advisors urge an immediate attack, but she reminds them how weak the Empire is and that her father wanted peace.
It's also worth pointing out that during her call, she asked for a neutral site and for the meeting, the conference, to be kept secret for the moment.
Indeed. Chang reminds her that things didn't work out well for her father due to his love of peace, but she stands her ground, insisting that the peace process will go ahead, but that Kirk will pay for the death of her father.
Yeah, there's a menacing sneer on her face when she says this, and understandable.
Indeed. At the Klingon court now.
Yeah, Kirk and McCoy are raised up into an intimidating courtroom like Ivan Drago in Rocky IV to chants of Kirk, Kirk, Kirk.
Yeah, they're out for their piece of blood, aren't they?
Yeah. Acting as prosecutor, Chang describes what occurred, and then he calls his first witness who describes what happened during the attack.
I quite like the way it was filmed here. So Chang starts speaking in Klingon, and it cuts away to the crowd, and we see Kirk listening to a translation, and then when it comes back to Chang, he's speaking English. I don't think he is actually speaking English, it's just the impression that we get now is that we can understand what he's saying.
Why all of a sudden do they need to have these translators? Because in other episodes when they've been face to face with Klingons, there isn't a...
Well, normally would have their universal translators, they obviously had them taken off them.
Really? During the original run, they were on the same planet, they were right beside each other.
Yeah, because they've come from their own ship on those occasions and they've got their own equipment. Like their communicator will have a universal translator, or however it's been. They don't have their own equipment here, so they have to use the Klingon equipment.
Okay.
Anyhow, yes, as you say, the first witness is the guy who got his arm blown off on the Klingon ship earlier. He says that the killers were able to walk around because they had magnetic boots.
Yeah, and we can see that this is all being viewed by Starfleet and the Enterprise.
Yes, and Spock takes particular interest. We know from the last film that he's into fancy boots.
Yeah. McCoy is next up and doesn't read the situation particularly well as he wisecracks when answering.
What is he doing?
Yeah, he's like, oh, yeah. And I think someone laughs and
there's like two people laughing.
Yeah, and he smiles. He goes, yep, I've got an audience here.
Chang crushes him by calling him a singular wit and is able then to press him on being old, incompetent and drunk.
That's pretty much it, yeah. Which causes the distressed McCoy to repeat that he was desperate to save him and he was in fact the last best hope for peace.
Kirk is the next witness and he is stopped in his tracks when they play a sample of his own personal log where he admits to blaming the Klingons for David's death and not trusting them.
Yeah, it doesn't look good for him, does it?
No, Chang presses on the fact that he has previous for insubordination and was indeed demoted for it.
Yeah, he does admit this, but insists that he knew nothing of the assassination, but flails about a little when asked to deny that the Enterprise shot at them and that a crew member or crew members beamed aboard to kill.
Yeah, he says he can't confirm or deny events he did not witness.
What he does do, however, is accept that he has overall responsibility for his ship, and at this, the prosecution rests.
We see Sulu on the Excelsior relay a message to Spock that they stand ready to assist.
Back to the court. We return as the judge finds Kirk and McCoy guilty, even though the defence claims the evidence to be circumstantial and wants that noted when it comes to sentencing.
We get reaction shots from Sarek, who looks a bit deflated, Rand, who seems to be laughing, but maybe it's meant to be crying.
I think it's probably crying.
And a staunch-looking Admiral Cartwright.
Yeah. Now, fortunately, due to the forthcoming peace talks, the judge commutes the death penalty, but delivers a fate perhaps worse than death.
Yeah, life at hard labour on Aurora Pente.
Yeah, which is a dilithium crystal mine.
Chekhov refers to it as the graveyard of aliens.
Doesn't sound too great.
Unless you're not an alien.
No. Back in the bridge, the gang are in shock at this heinous punishment, but Spock stands and has the torpedo hit replayed again on the viewer and pauses at the moment of impact.
Chekhov's convinced that it's Enterprise who has fired.
But Spock then decides to quote Sherlock or perhaps Arthur Conan Doyle, because he talks about an ancestor. So it wouldn't have been Sherlock. You know Sherlock's fictional.
Oh yeah, so it could be if he's saying that on his mother's side that Arthur Conan Doyle is an ancestor, I guess it's possible.
Yeah.
Data's into Sherlock Holmes in the Next Generation.
Yeah, I think I've mentioned before, that's one of the episodes that if I was flicking through the channels in the past, I think I've watched that because I'm a big Sherlock fan. Anyway, what's the quote he...
If you eliminate the impossible, then whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. He refers then to the neutron energy surge, and they come to the conclusion that a cloaked ship must have fired on the Klingons.
Yeah, see, I'm not sure if they have eliminated everything else.
There's lots of different possibilities.
Yeah. Anyway, they seem to accept that this particular ship must be able to fire when cloaked, and Valeris wants to let Starfleet know, but an outraged Scotty doesn't agree.
We must inform Starfleet Command.
Inform them of what? A new weapon that is invisible? Raving lunatics, that's what they'll call us. They'll say that we're so desperate to exonerate the captain that we'll say anything.
And they would be correct. We have no evidence. Only a theory which happens to fit the facts.
Assuming you're right, Mr. Spock, why would they fire on their own president?
Indeed. The ship will be searched from bow to stern. Lieutenant Valeris, you'll be in charge.
Aye, sir.
I do not understand. If there was a ship underneath us, surely the assassins beamed aboard from that vessel, not Enterprise.
You're forgetting something, Mr. Chekhov. According to our data banks, this ship fired those torpedoes. If we did, the killers are here. If we did not, whoever altered the data banks is here. In either case, what we are looking for is here.
What are we looking for, sir?
Lieutenant.
2 pairs of gravity boots.
Seems fair enough.
Yeah, for once, Scotty being fairly reasonable as well.
Rational. Maybe that bump in the head in the last movie has sorted him out.
Let's hope so. Rura, what's it called?
Pente.
Or Pente, I think they call it. It's blizzard-like conditions on the penal asteroid as a frozen...
It's the penal asteroid.
A penal hemorrhoid as a frozen McCoy and Kirk, along with other prisoners, are informed by the warden that there are no physical confinements above the mines, as none are required. I think there's some sort of shield, isn't there, to prevent communications in...
That's a magnetic shield, yeah.
Yeah. He then demonstrates the conditions, the harshness of the conditions, by throwing someone into the snow from the mines.
He immediately dies.
Yeah, well, you would do, I think. They are then led down into the mines through the tunnels, where they are disturbed to see dozens of different races working away, including a giant who wants his obedience to the Brotherhood of Aliens.
Kirk's obedience?
Yes, and his coat.
Yes, but a woman called Marsha intervenes and...
Can we just say a very hot woman called Marsha?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would marry her if I was an international pop star.
So would I.
She gets the alien to release Kirk and seems to know who Kirk and McCoy are.
She also passes him a little smoke, which apparently heats you up.
Yeah, and tells them there's a reward being offered for their deaths.
Yeah, a bounty on their heads.
That'll help them sleep.
And at this point, Kirk realises they have been set up. I think you should know beforehand, because if he didn't shoot, then obviously they've been set up.
Yeah, of course. Back on Enterprise.
In the kitchen, I think.
Yeah, I've said galley, but yeah, same thing. Valeris suggests that the boots may have been left on the Klingon ship, but Spock is able to point out that gravity wasn't restored until after the attackers left. How does he know?
He's the one. He's a guilty party.
Yeah.
Only the murderer would know that.
Oh, exactly. How would he know?
I don't know.
There's no way to know if they beamed out just before or just after the...
Yeah. And he's a Vulcan as well. Oh.
Mm.
Oh, I think I think this is like a Usual Suspects flashback where you go, wait a second.
Spock said this, wait.
Yeah. And you just see him slinking off, putting his watch
He's
on.
pinning somebody else for it, yeah.
Okay.
Chekhov suggests that the boots may have been vaporised, but Valeris has a ostentatious way to show him that can't be the case.
I am not really happy with this whole scene and what it implies.
Well, she's junior to Chekhov. Why is she trying to...
No, I just mean, I don't understand, right? So, okay, tell me what happens first of all.
She shoots a tub of potatoes and it sets off an alarm because she used the vaporised setting.
Yeah, but she's unauthorised on a starship. Now, how would firstly the system know this is unauthorised?
That's probably standard. It's not allowed.
No, wait a second, like, they've always got people coming on board, a lot of the time bad guys. So before you shoot, like, I don't understand, you've got to ask for authorisation to shoot. And we've seen this before. There have people been...
Yeah, it's one of these things where they go very specific, it doesn't really quite fit with what's been seen.
I suppose what you could say, this is the Enterprise A, so maybe it's a new
rule.
A new thing, yeah. Okay. Anyway, she asks about the refuse.
Yeah, whether they've been binned, but Spock says although he's having it checked, he doesn't think they would have done that. He thinks they'd have kept them close.
Ahura, security, and then Scotty arrived to see who was firing shots. Now that annoyed me. It's not their jobs. Why would they all be running down there to see who's firing?
In case one of their friends is being attacked.
But no, that's up to security.
We've already seen Kirk and McCoy taking that up to...
Plus, and with all this technology in the future, surely every place can quickly view CCTV.
Well, you would think, but CCTV doesn't play a huge part, except for that one episode where they used it to kill people.
They've always got cameras that from odd angles that where there shouldn't be cameras, but they have to go and manually or physically check it. Don't think so.
Spock at this point confuses Scotty completely.
How?
He asks him how long it's going to take to fix the perfectly functioning engines.
He says, what are you talking about? He's all angry.
There's nothing wrong with my engines.
But he understands Spock's desire for to have technical issues eventually.
He says it could take weeks, and Spock tells Valeris to let Starfleet know.
And with a smile, she's happy enough to pass on this lie, this untruth.
Uhura is concerned that they've lost contact with McCoy and Kirk, but Spock's sure that they'll be working on an escape plan already.
Kirk will already, just like Hannibal and the A-Team.
Yeah.
He's been there for half an hour. He will be well underway.
However,
it's quite good. It's a hard cut to
Kirk getting beaten up by a big guy.
He is, yeah. He's getting his ass kicked by a large alien. He's getting blood coming from his nose. It's some sort of bare knuckle prison fight where the loser gets raped.
Marsha is sitting at the side smoking a cigar while McCoy yells encouragement whilst being held back by other prisoners.
And as we heard at the top of the podcast, Kirk luckily wins through no skill.
Yeah, he tries to kick this guy in the knee. Turns out it's his genitals and it drops him for good.
However, Marsha warns him that there will be other attempts on him and asks if he wants to escape, which he's obviously quite keen to do.
Indeed. A wee bit later on.
In the sleeping area, McCoy is complaining about what lies in store for them, but Kirk has worries on a grander scale.
3 months before retirement. What a way to finish.
We're not finished.
Speak for yourself. One day, one night, Kobayashi Maru.
Bones, are you afraid of the future?
I believe that was a general idea that I was trying to convey.
I don't mean this future.
What is this? Multiple choice?
Some people are afraid. Of what might happen. I was terrified.
What terrified you specifically?
No more neutral zone. I was used to hating Klingons. It never even occurred to me to take Gorkin at his word. Spock was right.
Try not to be too hard on yourself. We all felt exactly the same.
Oh. Somebody felt a lot worse. I'm beginning to understand why.
Well, if you've got any bright ideas, now's the time.
Time's the problem. You and I are nothing. But you heard the judge. The peace conference is on again. Whoever killed Gorkin is bound to attempt another assassination. Unless we can get out of here.
I think that's another one of these important moments where Kirk is reflecting and explaining why it was he was so emotional about this at the start of the film. About, you know, in theory it's all well and good, yeah, okay, 1-to-1 we can have a meal with the Klingons, but when you talk about disbanding your entire defensive setup, ending the neutral zone that's kind of padded the space between you, and get rid of all your warships, and that's an
understandable human nervousness.
Certainly.
Marcia, she slides up to Kirk at this point.
Yeah, she says she can get them beyond the magnetic shield as long as they take her with them.
And he is responsible for getting them off the surface before they freeze.
Indeed. She then kisses Kirk.
Now, at that point, I had to check to see who directed this movie. I'm thinking, surely not Shatner.
No, it was...
There's a bit where the really hot, world-renowned supermodel finds me irresistible.
Kiss lasts 4 minutes.
It doesn't last 4 minutes, but there's quite a lot of lip movement, which was a bit... Ugh.
That's just an old man and a young supermodel. That's not uncommon. She gives them instructions for the morning, and then we head up to the Excelsior where Will Scarlet wakes Sulu.
Well, yeah, I just wrote Christian Slater.
He's only in this one scene. He just shows up randomly with his very high-profile face. Because this has come out months after Robin Hood.
Yeah, he was a star at this point.
Well, yeah, not when he filmed it. When it came out, he was. It's in between.
I mean, he had movies before. I mean, he wasn't...
His big breakout was in Robin Hood, I think.
Maybe. I'm sure he was in movies, but it was Pump Up the Volume.
I'm not sure.
I think that might have been before. Anyway,
things like Broken Arrow and that were after this.
Yeah, but I still think he was a bit of a teen star.
Yeah, maybe a soap sort of. But anyway,
I'm assuming that maybe he was a fan, and
maybe
because I'm not, even at that point he had starred in movies. I think he had been in movies. I'm not sure if he was taking a 10-second part if he wasn't a Star Trek fan.
He asks, wakes Sulu in bed rather than just calling down, asking if there's any information on the location of the Enterprise that they can pass to Starfleet. Sulu tells him to say no, which surprises him, and then he gets chased off.
Yeah, he understands what's happening.
Eventually. Over in the Enterprise transporter room, Chekhov's doing some investigation.
Yeah, he has found some dried pink Klingon blood.
Well, he doesn't know it's Klingon blood at this stage. He's found this substance.
Yeah, we are in the lab. It is confirmed to be this by Spock, and supports their theory that the killer came back from Gorkin's ship.
Yes, but rather than take this to Starfleet, Spock says they need to expand their search to uniforms.
But also, this is what Chang was saying. I don't understand what this means, how that supports their theory. Like, Chang says, your guys came across...
Well, Spock's theory is that there's something on board the Enterprise. Either the killers are here, or the saboteur is here, or both. Yeah. And the fact that the blood's here means that the killers are on board. They didn't go to the other ship.
Yeah, okay, sure, fine, yeah. Yeah, and as you say, Spock now wants to expand their search to the uniforms. All uniforms.
Yes, so one of Valeris's search team eventually finds a pair of the magnetic boots in a locker.
Yeah, belonging to crewman Dax.
We'll see why they're not belonging to Dax shortly.
We shall. But in the meantime, we go to lift number 7, where a large creature with a voice not suited to its stature tells them to get off at the first level and follow the gang into the mine.
McCoy thinks that Marcia's let them down and hasn't made the rendezvous, but it turns out this large creature is Marcia, which is a bit of a concern.
So what is Marcia's true form, do we know?
It's this, I think it's this one.
Is it?
Well, she says later on that she took on the female form to please Kirk and McCoy.
Yeah, it was very
So it's
pleasing.
certainly not that one.
Yeah. Back in the locker room, Dax is summoned and Chekhov starts by talking of the Russian tale of Cinderella. However, a bit like OJ, it appears that a lack of fit is going to be Dax's saviour. Yeah, look down, he's got webbed alien feet which wouldn't apparently fit in the boots.
I read a theory this week that I hadn't heard before, that OJ apparently stopped taking arthritis medication in advance of his trial so his hand would swell up and not fit the glove.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm not sure about that.
Back on Rura Penthe, there's a few things happen. So Kirk's not pleased when McCoy reminds him about the kiss. Was that before the flick?
I'm not sure.
Either way, it happens. And then we get a point of view shot as we see miners mining and 3 Klingon guards blocking the exit. But Marsha tries a new trick.
Yeah, she transforms into a young girl, which enables her to remove... Now, at this point, Kirk might be going, oh, don't tell me this is your true form. Oh, no. My lord, I did not... She looked older.
She definitely looked older. And yes, the Klingons are distracted long enough that Kirk and McCoy are able to escape both the prison and eventually the magnetic shield.
Yeah, they follow her through a passage and up a rock face to outside and into the snow. They pass by the warning victim from earlier.
They do.
Yeah, and they walk in the blizzard for a long time until they come to the edge of it looks like a basin.
Yes. As soon as they're clear of the magnetic shield, Spock is aware of it and sets a course to rescue them. Why was he not already on his way? He knows where they were taken and he knows they're going to try and escape.
It's also quite a verbose instruction he gives to Chekhov. Anyway, we're back down there. McCoy collapses and does the old movie cliche of telling Kirk to go on without him.
This is like all our yesterdays. He did the exact same thing. Remember, after like 20 seconds in the snow, he's like, no,
Yeah.
I'm going to die. You just go. And then Kirk's like, Spock's coming, it's alright. He's like, oh, I'm fine, I'll carry on.
Yeah, Kirk tells him, however, that Spock slapped a Viridium patch on his back. I'm sure that's a way of tracking him.
Yeah. Of course, McCoy's right to be concerned because the last time he was in this situation, Spock tried to abandon him for the girl.
That's true, yes.
Anyway, up on the Enterprise, we've got this sort of conversation between them and a Klingon listening post trying to get access to the zone.
Yeah, so what happens here?
This is absurd for a start. Uhura doesn't know enough Klingon to speak, so they're having to pull out like 4 different dictionaries. And
it reminded me a little bit of Ferris Bueller.
They're all able to read Klingon well enough and speak it, but no one knows enough to say simple phrases.
They're all flustered, trying to...
And they're looking up specific phrases, so it's like Klingon for tourists and stuff. It's like ridiculous. I think Sean Nichols was annoyed as well about this.
It's like the secretary in Bueller, when she's trying to stall as Ed Rooney is looking for some information and she's giving it, oh.
Yeah. She manages to express that they are a freighter travelling to Rura Penthe to decontaminate spoons and deliver things.
Yeah.
But the guard doesn't care. He just tells them not to catch worms or something and starts laughing. So they laugh back and they're allowed through.
Back down on Rura Penthe, they have fashioned a camp with flares, and McCoy asks Marsha about her little trick.
Which little trick?
Of changing into things. Quite a big trick.
Yeah, she explains that she's a cameloid, but while this is happening, you see...
Turns into a camel. An android camel.
I think Kirk's got a marble rolling at this point. Something's not quite sitting right for him.
Yeah, I mean, he refers to them as shapeshifters, but thought they were just myths. She tells them it takes a lot of effort and changes back into the hottie to prove the point.
Yeah.
Which didn't seem to be a great amount of effort, to be fair. She just done it.
She's just saying it's a lot of effort, so she gets more credit.
Yeah.
But Kirk's on to her at this point.
I think so,
She's very conveniently brought with her the stuff they need to keep warm and a flare, which is going to give their position away. So he punches her in the face.
Quite a violent one. I mean, is that the first? No.
I mean, at least she's not pregnant, but...
Like, obviously McCoy punched a pregnant woman, but I think Kirk's punched a woman before.
He has.
Well, she's not a woman, is she?
No, well, we don't know. Sometimes she is.
A little girl.
She changes her appearance again to mimic Kirk, causing an exchange where he says kissing himself was his lifelong ambition.
Yeah, or he acknowledges the narcissistic.
Yeah, I think this joke works so well, it doesn't matter which one of them is saying which line.
Yeah. But I don't get why she would change into him. It doesn't... There's no one there to confuse. And I'm not sure how it works, this cameloid, because she's just taking the form of someone of equal strength. If I'm going to be in a fight, I would rather be the big monster.
Yeah, we saw this before with, was it Garth of Azar did this?
Yeah, but it's fine when you're trying to confuse a third party, but at this point they're just fighting each other.
And also one of them's got leg chains on, so they know which one's which.
Yeah.
I like the bit where the Klingons show up and they stop fighting, and the fake Kirk points up to shoot him over his head as if I'm not used to being this height.
Yeah. Alright, yeah.
They misjudge it.
Yeah, okay.
But anyway, yes, the Marsha is the one who's shot by the Klingons because they don't want any witnesses. But Kirk and McCoy are set to be next.
However, just at the last second, what happens?
Kirk persuades them to tell their entire evil plan.
They're about to.
Which uses up a few seconds before Spock beams them away just before they get all the answers.
When he arrives, he moans that the guard was just about to give up the whole story. But he's not particularly keen to go back and find out.
They could have beamed the guard up.
Yeah, but he's come up with a weapon. He might have started shooting. It's a bit of a risk.
That's true. Chekhov offers to send them back, and McCoy's not interested in that.
No. In the meeting room, Scotty is enjoying a cup of tea when he hears something.
Yeah, I think this is the galley again. He hears an odd noise from a vent, so he goes to examine it and finds 2 uniforms covered in purple stains.
Back in the Klingon ship, we see Chang receive the news that Kirk and McCoy have escaped and are aboard the Enterprise.
His officers aren't too concerned because they think there's no way that Kirk can know where the peace conference is.
But he is not as convinced as them, and so they set a course to intercept the Enterprise.
In a corridor on the Enterprise, Spock explains to Kirk that there's a new weapon.
Yeah, a bird of prey that can fire when cloaked.
He's also convinced that the assassins of Gorkon are aboard the Enterprise. Kirk has a thought about this, but before he can express it, Scotty arrives with the uniforms and they find the 2 dead crewmen who previously wore those uniforms in the turbo lift.
Yeah, confusingly, the uniforms belong to the victims, and Kirk remarks that the first rule of assassination is to kill the assassins, a bit like the old Oswald and
Ruby,
yeah.
Chekhov explains to McCoy they likely weren't vaporised to avoid the alarm going off.
And at the same time, we see Kirk is asked and is speaking to Spock
they're
alone.
huddling a wee bit further away, yes.
And I think, what does Spock say? You see him mouth, yeah, it's possible.
Yes, so a message then goes out over comms to all hands.
A cunning plan this is, I liked it.
They're looking for a court reporter to attend sickbay to take statements from Burke and Samno.
Yeah, they're the assassins, who we know to be dead, but obviously if they weren't dead, they
would need to become dead.
They would need to become dead. Yeah, it's a little bit Agatha Christie.
Okay. The assassin we then see under cover of darkness making their way into sickbay.
With a phaser raised.
Yes, but under the first sheet is neither Burke nor Samno.
It's Spock who turned on a light to reveal himself, and who is he face to face with?
It's Lieutenant Valeris.
Were you surprised at that?
I was fairly surprised, but not as surprised as Spock, who's clearly furious and remains furious for quite some time.
He would be, and I think it's just as much embarrassment.
Yes. So he tells her if she's logical, she has to shoot him.
She claims she doesn't want to, and he responds by saying it's not what she wants that is relevant, it's what she has chosen. But at this point, Kirk sits up from the other bed and tells her he would rather that she didn't take out his friend.
And Spock angrily smacks the weapon out of her hand as McCoy comes through.
Yeah, he is really...
Spock is fuming.
Yeah. On the bridge, the place is packed to watch her being interrogated by Kirk, but she's decided against admitting anything, just for the moment.
I did not fire. You cannot prove anything.
Yes, I can.
At my trial, my personal log was used against me. How long did you wait outside my quarters before I noticed you?
You knew? I tried to tell you, but you would not listen.
Neither of us was hearing very well that night, Lieutenant. There were things I tried to tell you about having faith.
You have betrayed the Federation. All of you.
And what do you think you've been doing?
Saving Starfleet. Klingons cannot be trusted. Sir, you said so yourself. They killed your son. Did you not wish Gorkon dead? Let them die, you said. Did I misinterpret you? And you were right. They conspired with us to assassinate their own chancellor. How trustworthy can they be?
Klingons and Federation members conspiring together.
Who is us?
Everyone who stands to lose from peace.
Names, Lieutenant.
My comrades will make certain all your ship-to-shore transmissions are jammed.
Names, Lieutenant.
I do not remember.
A lie?
A choice.
Spock.
So at this point, Spock gives her a bit of a mind meld raping.
Well, not initially. Well, kind of initially.
It's against her will.
Yeah, mind rape.
Yeah.
But she deserves it.
Okay.
Does she?
Victim blaming.
Is she the victim?
Of the raping. Of the mind.
We've talked about this before.
What?
The episode where he made Kirk forget about the woman that he fell for that he couldn't see anymore.
Yeah.
In this case, I think you can see Spock's emotions are kind of in play here, aren't they?
Yeah.
And he causes her some distress as he tries to find out where these peace talks are. But it turns out, although she knows names, she names Admiral Cartwright, General Chang, and Nanculus, the Romulan ambassador.
Mm-hmm.
She does not know the location of the peace conference. And then there's a great moment where Scotty says, "We're dead then," and Spock says, "Nah, I've been dead before."
Yeah. Yeah, towards the end of it, she almost does a Miss Honeywell.
Does she?
Did you get that reference? No.
No.
That was her character in Porky's.
Okay.
Where when she got excited, she made some noises.
She did make some distressed noises here.
Yeah, wasn't quite as distressed in Porky's.
Okay. Anyhow, Sulu is giving a shout at this point.
Tell me about it.
It turns out he knew all along where the peace conference was. There was no need to go into her brain.
No, well, they had to find out who the most important thing are.
The names, yeah.
Conspirators, yeah.
Sulu says it's at Camp Kittimer near the Romulan border, but he's further away than they are, and the talks are starting today.
And then when Valeris confirms there is only one prototype bird of prey ship that can fire when cloaked, Kirk tells Sulu about this and asks for help.
Yeah. There's actually an episode of Star Trek Voyager that fills in the gaps now for Excelsior between now and when it arrives at Kittimer.
Oh, yeah.
There's a whole adventure it has to go through.
Okay.
But I've not watched it, so I don't know exactly.
Voyager? Is that, when did that air?
That was the 30th anniversary show, I think.
Right.
So it would have been 5 years after this.
Okay. Spock's quarters. He's lying on his bed in the dark when Kirk enters and concedes that he was right and he was arrogantly presumptuous.
I think this is one of the best scenes in all of Star Trek that we've seen so far.
Yes.
I think the two actors right on top of everything, the characters perfectly realised, and what they're saying is just, it's just all top notch.
Definitely, and I think what it shows here aptly is the culmination of a character arc or character's arc.
Yes, between the two of them. Yes.
Yeah.
So, as you say, Spock acknowledges that his arrogant presumptions caused this situation. So he's referring back to the very start when he nominated Kirk for the job in the first place and thought they could have peace with the Klingons.
Mm-hmm.
But Kirk acknowledges that although he and McCoy could have been killed, peace is worth personal risk.
And he also admits that he is known to rush into things without thinking enough about the consequences, and then describes them both as extremists with the reality sitting somewhere in the middle. And I think
perhaps why they've worked well together.
Yes. Yeah. A yin and yang.
Kirk explains that he was prejudiced by David's death, and it took Gorkon's death to show him that. And
Spock himself accepts he had a bias with regards to Valeris because she was a successful Vulcan.
Yes, and Spock ponders whether the two of them have become so old and inflexible that they've outlived their usefulness.
Yeah, he asks if this is a joke, and I don't think it is a joke. It's like, no, that's not a joke, Spock, but it is quite pertinent. It's quite...
Yeah, but Kirk reassures Spock that he doesn't need to take responsibility for what Valeris did. Each of them are only responsible for their own actions, out with obviously the context of being the captain of a ship and being, like he said at his trial.
Yeah, during the trial he was talking as a captain, not as a human.
Yes, as an individual.
Spock reminds him that he is in fact not human.
And Kirk says everybody's human, which Spock says is an insulting remark.
Yeah, he feigns offence.
Kirk tells him he needs him and they need to get back to the bridge.
We head briefly to the conference.
In Kittimer.
Yes, where the Federation President is addressing the attendees. And we go back to space, where we see the bird of prey approach and cloak as the Enterprise searches for her.
Indeed.
They're 2 minutes away from being close enough to beam down.
Yes, Kirk knows, however, that Chang is out there somewhere and tells him to look out for these energy spikes.
Yeah, this, for the next sort of 10 minutes, there's quite a lot of cutting back and forth between the different locations.
Yes,
the bird
speeches going on. It gives you a sense of urgency. It's quite good.
Yes, it was nice editing. We are now 40 seconds away from beam down.
Yes, as the President is making his speech, and we see a Klingon in the audience there looking around nervously.
Chang taunts Kirk with an audio-only communication, stating, "I can see you, but you can't see me."
He does not want peace in their time and bids them once more onto the breach and fires.
Yeah, the Enterprise receives a direct hit. On the bridge, Kirk orders reverse to be applied, and this confuses Chang for a moment before a second shot is fired.
Indeed. Meanwhile, Sulu urges the Excelsior helmsman to push the ship harder.
He's riding to the rescue at speed.
You can almost hear his theme tune. It's like the Lone Ranger or something. Yes. Meanwhile, at the conference, the Klingon who was looking anxious earlier now leaves his seat carrying a box, while the Klingon Chancellor has begun her speech.
The Enterprise, meanwhile, takes another direct hit, which destroys auxiliary power. And on the bird of prey, Chang is quoting Shakespeare as he enjoys their predicament.
Meanwhile, Spock realises that the bird of prey must be emitting plasma, and Uhura points out that much like the Excelsior, they have equipment on board to catalogue gaseous anomalies. So Spock asks McCoy to help him with a project. He needs to perform surgery on a torpedo.
At the conference, the assassin has the Federation President in his sight from above.
He does. Meanwhile, the Enterprise is struggling from the attack and the Excelsior arrives, drawing Chang's fire.
Is this the point where he quips that the game is afoot?
Yes, and then he says to cry havoc and let slip the dogs of war.
Yeah, as he's twirling his moustache.
A hole is blown through the saucer section of the Enterprise as Spock and McCoy complete their work. But meanwhile, the assassin prepares his weapon.
Finally, the torpedo on the Enterprise is ready and is fired.
Yes, it weaves its way towards Chang as Sulu and Kirk watch on.
I was half expecting Chang to stare at the camera and sort of mouth or scream, "Oh shit!"
It wasn't far off.
Yeah.
The torpedo finds its target and both Enterprise and Excelsior follow it up with more weapons.
Which blasts it to smithereens.
Hurrah.
Yeah.
Down at the conference, the sniper is ready as the Enterprise crew beam in.
Yeah, the 6 of them, the 6 main ones.
Yeah.
Not without Sulu.
Scotty's sent up the stairs and the others disrupt proceedings. Kirk has to dive from a very long way away.
I was very surprised there was no slow-mo in this.
Yeah, it's like in The Bodyguard.
Yeah.
But he's able to save the President and the traitors are captured. Cartwright stands up and asks security to arrest the Enterprise crew.
But Spock, at this point, drags in Valeris, who has apparently given a full confession.
So it's Cartwright himself who's in trouble, and he tries to leave, but he's prevented as Sulu and his friends arrive.
At the same time, the assassin is about to take out the...
Valeris, I think. He's got his aim set on Valeris.
Yes. But Scotty, who saves the day, he leaps through the door and phasers him out of the window to his death.
Oh dear. Azepbar asks what is going on and Kirk takes the opportunity to make a speech.
Yeah, I wasn't particularly happy with this. Kirk, he makes a very Hollywood speech and we get the Hollywood sort of round of applause.
Yeah, some people want to stop the future from happening, but they've not run out of history just yet, and people are frightened of change, but she notes that he's restored her father's faith, and he says that you've restored my son's faith. Does his son have faith in this sort of thing?
He wasn't caring about politics, he was just into his science.
Yeah. My favourite thing is when they stand to applaud, there's a species that clearly don't have elbows. So they're standing with their arms straight, doing a big wide clap with a bunch of the yellow faces with the ridge.
Yeah. We're back in the bridge for the last time.
Yes, Enterprise and Excelsior fly side by side as McCoy notes, nobody's going to be prosecuted but Uhura.
Whoa. We start off this scene, let's not skip over that. A very immodest Kirk boasts that once again they have saved civilization.
I think he's having a bit of a laugh there.
Maybe, but I think he also believes it. And in fairness, maybe he has.
Yes. And like I say, McCoy notes there's no prosecutions coming, and Uhura says they could have prosecuted her because she felt much the same way as Valeris.
Well, I think most of them they agree to this. I think they're admitting to their
prejudices. Yeah. But McCoy says you don't get arrested for feelings.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing as well, again, it's not like prejudices you would have here. They are pretty much justified. I mean, they're a bad lot. They do go about. I'm not sure how many good Klingons they've experienced or...
Oh, Worf was helping them out, and then Gorkon was good, and his daughter's okay.
Yeah, that's now, but I'm saying previously, prior to that, why would you...
They've worked in harmony with... Have they? Kur and... No, not really. I mean, they got into negotiations in the trouble.
Anytime they're given an opportunity, they try...
Cause trouble.
Cause trouble, yeah.
Anyhow, Sulu comes on screen to patronise Kirk one last time.
How does he do that?
He tells him it was good to see him in action once more, and tells him to take care.
Yeah, after being thanked for his help. But Uhura then delivers news that deflates them all.
Yes, it's to put back to space dock to be decommissioned.
However, Spock raises a smile when he says that if he were human, his response would be to go to hell.
Or to tell them to go to hell.
Yeah. And Kirk takes this advice.
Yes, he gives Sulu directions, second star on the right, straight on till morning. That's the way to Neverland.
Is it?
Yes, where the young boys never grow up.
Ah, right, okay. Didn't know that.
Yeah. Lost Boys, I think.
What, the vampire movie from the 80s?
I'm not even sure.
Okay.
Should I check that before we commit?
No. Before we hear the final ever log from Captain James T. Kirk.
Captain's log, stardate 9529.1. This is the final cruise of the Starship Enterprise under my command. This ship and her history will shortly become the care of another crew. To them and their posterity will we commit our future. They will continue the voyages we have begun and journey to all the undiscovered countries, boldly going where no man, where no one has gone before.
As the Enterprise heads for the star in front of them, it fades away completely, implying that the whole thing's a dream.
Wake up in the shower.
That's it. And then we see the end credits. It's the cast's autographs on the screen, which I think other films have copied subsequently.
Have they?
That's certainly one of the Avengers films, did it?
Right, all that sci-fi stuff.
Yeah.
There you go.
And that's it. No more Star Trek.
Well, not for us.
No.
Not in a professional capacity. I'll say professional.
Do you think that's a fitting resolution to the story for these characters?
Yeah, I thought it was absolutely fine.
Absolutely fine. That's your verdict.
Yeah, I mean, I did.
That'll do.
Yeah, no, it was good.
I thought this may be the strongest of the films, arguably.
I'm not sure if I enjoyed it the most. I mean, it might be the strongest in terms of the character development and plot and arc and all that type of stuff, but...
No whales.
No whales, yeah. I think The Voyage Home would be my favourite just for pure enjoyment.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that next week. Don't
okay. Sorry,
jump the gun.
Yeah.
Any highlights in this particular film that you liked?
I think, as we mentioned during the podcast there, I think some of the self-awareness by Kirk and Spock was nicely done.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And I thought also the sort of twist in this episode with the sort of murder mystery element to it.
You like a bit of a murder mystery?
I love a bit of murder mystery. So that was really enjoyable. It's a different feel.
How quickly did you pin it on Valeris?
Yeah, fairly quickly, to be fair. I mean, there's not that many possibilities, was there, really? You're introduced to
I
one...
just didn't think about it until...
Well, if you're accepting that the person or the people were on board, you can either go two ways. It's one of the ones you've been introduced to,
or someone you've never heard of.
And that would be that wouldn't be very satisfying. So I assumed it was her.
Yeah. Anything you think didn't work?
No, like I said, Kirk's stance on the Klingons was a little harsh. I thought it took it a little bit to the extreme. I can understand him not trusting. I think that's where he could have taken it. Yeah, him being unhappy with having to do this, but the whole attitude about they should all just die doesn't, to me, it doesn't sit with.
I mean, I think it's meant to be an analogy for people who, after the Cold War or at the end of the Cold War, weren't sympathetic towards, should we help Russia out if it's going to...
Sure, let's not talk about Russia these days because people won't...
Well, that's a whole different set of circumstances now.
Yeah.
You think this film sits quite well with the other five?
Yeah, I think it sits fine. It doesn't stand out in any way being egregious.
Okay. Anything else before I go into the trivias?
No. No.
Well, let's do this. I've tried to be fairly brief with trivia this week.
Let's hope.
This was originally released in December of 1991, directed by Nicholas Meyer, who has also got a screenplay credit. You You can hear more about him on the podcast for The Wrath of Khan.
Nick, can I have that? See that Marcia? Can I think I could, Bill? It's not going to work. Do it. Go on. I'm the main man. Give me
one last time.
Okay, you owe me big. Thanks.
It's Kirk's final kiss on screen. Denny Martin Flynn gets a screenplay credit. This is the only screenplay credit of his career, albeit one that earned Saturn and Hugo Award nominations. But he died in 2007 at the age of 59. Leonard Nimoy, Lawrence Connor and Mark Rosenthal are credited for the story. You can hear more about Nimoy on the Turnabout Intruder podcast. Connor wrote for films like Superman 4, Planet of the Apes and The Many Saints of Newark.
Superman 4 was garbage.
As well as for series like The Sopranos, Boardwalk Empire and Roots. He's taught screenwriting at Princeton and Columbia University. He's now 72 years old. Rosenthal has a more compact CV, but he also worked on Superman 4, Planet of the Apes and Roots, as well as Mona Lisa Smile, all alongside Connor. And he's taught screenwriting at the University of Pennsylvania.
Okay, so a sort of double team.
It seems to me. Kim Cattrall played Valeris. She's the big Columbo connection this week.
Friend of ours, we've spoke to her before.
Yeah, she's appeared on the episode How to Dial a Murder opposite Nicole Williamson. Perhaps best known for her work in Sex and the City.
Porky's.
She's also appeared on shows like Starsky and Hutch, Charlie's Angels and How I Met Your Father.
What Porky's?
She's in a movie called Porky's as well. She's a Golden Globe winner, an Emmy nominee, and remains active, and she's now 65 years old.
She seems a nice enough person as well.
I like her.
Yeah, I do like her, yeah. Like she'd be maybe quite harshly treated by some of the other cast members.
Well, certainly in public.
Yeah.
David Warner played Chancellor Gorkon. You can hear more about him on the podcast from The Final Frontier last week. Rosanna De Soto played his daughter Azit Burr. This was her only Star Trek appearance, but she also appeared on shows like Quantum Leap, Law and Order, and Melrose Place, and she's now 71 years old, which means she played David Warner's daughter despite being only 9 years younger than him.
Parts of Ayrshire, that would be perfectly acceptable and normal, in fact.
Don't know what you're talking about. Brock Peters and John Shook returned as their characters from The Voyage Home, Admiral Cartwright and Ambassador Camarog. You can hear more about them on the podcast for that movie. Kurtwood Smith played the Federation president. He went on to appear as different characters in 3 Star Trek series, DS9, Voyager and Lower Decks.
Kurtwood Smith is brilliant. I've seen him many times.
He's also appeared in shows like 24, The A-Team and The X-Files, as well as films like Broken Arrow and RoboCop.
RoboCop's his big one.
He remains active. He's now 78 years old.
He plays a great bad guy.
He's a good guy in this one.
Yeah.
Christopher Plummer played Chang, an Oscar winner in 2012 for the second of his 3 nominations. He's also won Emmys, a BAFTA, a Golden Globe and a Screen Actors Guild Award, amongst many other prizes and nominations for a long and glittering career. He starred in movies like Knives Out,
brilliant,
Up, A Beautiful Mind and Beginners, amongst many others. He died in 2021 at the age of 91 and is considered amongst the best Canadian actors of all time, alongside his contemporary and friend William Shatner. Michael Dorn played the Klingon defending Kirk and McCoy in court, Colonel Worf. He plays that character's grandson, also Worf, in The Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, as well as 4 feature films.
There you go.
Dorn made an uncredited appearance in the first Rocky movie, as well as showing up in things like Chips, Webster and Arrow. He's now 69 years old. Iman played Marsha.
Did you see, sorry, the first Rocky movie?
Yeah.
He must have been a
kid, maybe, yeah. Well, what year was it?
No, maybe he played a boxer in the gym.
Maybe. I suppose. Maybe in his 20s.
Yeah.
Iman played Marsha. This was her only Star Trek appearance, but she also showed up on things like The Cosby Show, Miami Vice, as well as films like LA Story, and she's now 66 years old.
Come on.
What?
What's the other really important thing about who
about
she
her
is?
Screen career?
No, about who?
Well, she was married to David Bowie for a while.
Yeah.
And they've got a kid.
Yeah. That's the thing she's most famous for.
Oh, that's disrespectful.
No, it's not
her own career.
Not doing respect, it's just what she's most famous for.
Robert Easton played the Klingon judge. This was his only Star Trek appearance, but he also appeared in films like Pet Sematary 2 and Working Girl, as well as series like Lassie and Stingray, one of my favourites. He died in 2011 when he was 81. Christian Slater played an officer on the Excelsior. This was his only Star Trek appearance, but he would go on to show up in films like Interview with the Vampire, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves and True Romance. He remains active and is now 52 years old. I don't think he's aged for about 20 years.
Yeah, and Pump Up the Volume was 1990.
It's a similar time frame, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a couple more Columbo connections in the movie.
Is there?
Baron Christian played an unnamed Klingon assistant. and would go on to appear as a man dressed as Cardinal Richelieu in Death Hits the Jackpot.
Okay.
Richard Sarstedt lists only 9 acting credits on his CV, 6 of which are Star Trek shows or films, almost all of which are uncredited. He played an unnamed Romulan delegate in this film, and a character named Philip on Columbo and the Death of a Rock Star.
There you go.
Katie Garretson was a second assistant director on both this film and 3 Columbos, R.I.P. Mrs. Columbo, Uneasy Lies the Crown and Murder in Malibu. And Dan Neese was a Steadicam operator on both this movie and the Columbo episode No Time to Die. General trivia. The film was nominated for 2 Oscars, for sound effects editing and for makeup, although it didn't win either of them. After this movie, some of the characters do appear again canonically. Kirk dies in the motion picture Generations, helping Picard stop the villain Tolian Soren. Scotty gets caught in a transporter pattern buffer for decades and is reconstituted in the 24th century during an episode of The Next Generation. Spock becomes an ambassador and leads efforts to reunite the Vulcans and Romulans before being caught in a black hole and sent back in time to start a new timeline in the J.J. Abrams movies.
Okay.
McCoy lives to attend the launch of the Enterprise D in the first episode of Star Trek The Next Generation. Sulu is captain of the Excelsior for over 30 years. Uhura becomes a captain, and after a 5-year mission, her ship is used primarily for training cadets, and she remains captain for over 25 years until her retirement. We don't know much about Chekhov after this, but he did appear as a guest of honour at the launch of the Enterprise B at the start of Star Trek Generations. Gene Roddenberry died during post-production of this film, hence the dedication at the start. He did see apparently an edit of the full film just before he died. The film takes place about 6 years after the events of Star Trek V.
Okay.
If you're wondering about the timeline. Nothing from the original draft by Lawrence Conner and Mark Rosenthal was used in the final film. They went to the Writers Guild demanding story credit, and initially Leonard Nimoy's story credit was removed, but he threatened to sue, and ultimately all 3 of them got story credit.
Really?
Yeah. In terms of other versions, there's a director's cut and a VHS version, which I think are similar, that have 3 extra minutes. So you see Rani Auberjonis, who went on to appear in Deep Space Nine as Odo. He shows up as Colonel West in some of the early scenes with the Federation president, but also it turns out that when the Klingon sniper is killed by Scotty, they notice his blood is red and they take off his Klingon face to reveal it's Colonel West in disguise.
Right, okay.
There's also a short scene with Scotty and Spock manually inspecting torpedoes. Next time, we are going to have a look back at both the series and the movies in our big final wrap-up episode.
Are we?
We are, and then we'll be on to Project New.
Or Project New.
Well, time will tell. So, until then,
cheerio.
Bye-bye.